Life is a blessing, it's a blessing, and I know it. Yes, wow, no, share my thoughts.
Blessed love, one and all. Another Wednesday.
Share my thoughts.
And anytime you hear Clement Ire share my thoughts, you know it's time to share our thoughts. On People's Parliament on the program Conscious Vibes, www.saharafmradio.com. Wednesdays 4 to 5, this is a platform for pure conscious talk. As usual, the Parliament convenes devoid of all the trappings of elitism. We go straight and talk from the point of view of the common man who feel it. Yes. Today we're sharing our thoughts on this subject. And we want you all to join in to share our thoughts on the subject. Africa used to be a safe continent, quote unquote, as far as the activities of terrorists are concerned, or at least so we thought. Islamist militants used to target the West, the London subway, the World Trade Center, you know, such so-called icons of Western capitalism and imperialism. Lately, however, these militants seem to be shifting their focus and relocating the cells of their activities. A coalition of militant forces nearly overran Mali, and it took the intervention of the former colonial power France, backed by African forces under the UN banner, to stop these militants from totally taking over the country. Just a while ago, the Al-Shabaab militant group in Somalia claimed responsibility for a siege on a Kenyan mall in which over 60 people were killed. Following this, there are also talks of an imminent attack on Ghana. Ghana, poor innocent. Ghana. According to British intelligence, the supposed threat on Ghana is as a result of that country's, participation in the Mali crisis, where Ghana actually contributed some troops, as well as set up an aviation base to help push out the militants. On the show today, I have my erudite panel, and they will help us all to understand why there seems to be a recent trend of these militants shifting their attention from the West to Africa. How did we get here? Why Africa? What has Africa got to do with all these things? On the line right now, I believe we have Omololu, we have Kwesi, we have Kofi, and possibly we have Noah as well. And they will all help us to do justice to the subject. Conscious Vibes, www.saharafmradio.com. This is your platform. Stick and stay, don't go no place, as I welcome my panel for today. You're welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So we're gonna go straight. We're gonna dig straight into it. Okay. Let me be double sure. Let me cross check and make sure who I have on the line. Do I have Kofi?
Kofi? Okay, cool. Hi. Very fine.
Great. Okay, I have Kofi. Do I have Kwesi?
Yes. I'm right here.
Hello.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, Kwesi is there too. Do I have? If you could please speak up a tad for me, because the levels are a bit, it differs from one person to the other. So if you could just raise your voice a bit. All right, and I have Omololu, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, is there anybody else on the line that I haven't mentioned? All right, cool. So we'll go straight into it. Let me start with you, Kwesi. Can you help us trace the genesis of terrorism in general, as you know, as a trend? How did this whole thing start?
Okay. First of all, let me say thank you for having me on your program. I'm really honored. Now, to your question, terrorism in general is as old as humanity. It's existed for thousands of years. The word assassins is derived from a group of people who were actually assassins who were terrorists in the Mesopotamian area. So we've had it for as long as history has been recorded. As to terrorism in Africa, that is a fairly recent phenomenon. Right up to the 1990s, Africa was free of terrorism. If you recollect, the first major terrorist attack in sub-Saharan Africa, let me put it this way, was in 1998 when the embassies of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania were blown up by Al-Qaeda. And that was the first major terrorist attack. Subsequently, we've had a few in Kampala, we've had some in northern Nigeria, the Sahel region, and elsewhere. But basically, this phenomenon is it's a combination of a few factors. I mean, basically, of radical Islam, inequality, weak governance, and let me put it this way, and an insensitivity by many of our leaders towards the plight of the suffering of the poor. So you look at places like, you see this occurring in places like we have Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, the ones that began in Algeria, moved down to Libya, and moved down to Mali, moved down to, some of them are in Chad, the Chad region, in Borno State, affiliates of Boko Haram. We have the ones in the Sahel region, the movement of oneness. We have obviously Boko Haram. We have Al-Shabaab, and we shouldn't forget, we also have the Lord Resistance Army in Uganda, which are considered a terrorist group. Yeah. So we've had this. But it's a recent phenomenon. And the reason why it's become a little bit more pronounced is because they've realized that the severity of the impact of their attack tends to resonate with us and tends to resonate with the West. So, for instance, if they're able to kill a few Westerners, then their political goal is much more stated. I mean, for lack of a better word, it's stated, emphatically that this is what we are about. We are out there. We're not here to play, and people begin to take notice of them. Although you realize that the agenda is localized, it's not like the Al Qaeda where you have this caliphate kind of mentality where they want to establish an universal Islamic State, whatever they call it. These groups are local, but they seem to understand that when you're able to have the way to have a big impact is to kill as many people, especially Westerners.
Wow.
Can I add my thoughts now?
Yes, Omololu.
Yeah, and can you ask the question one more time?
Well, I actually had a different question for you. So if you didn't hear the question, then maybe I might as well just move on to a different question for you. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, great. As far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, these terrorists seem to complain basically about, capitalism and the way the West deals with certain groups of people, etc. Right? Now, all of a sudden, they are shifting their attention to Africa. Where at all does Africa come in the picture? What link do they have with Africa?
For terrorists, I think that they are always looking for a place where they can plan, a safe place where they can launch their attacks. And I think like anywhere terrorism is in the world, either in Nigeria or Mali, anywhere in the world, it is a threat to the international community. So pretty much, for example, in Nigeria, when you have a government that historically has failed the people, and the people, a lot of people are hungry, and when you have people that are funding terrorism, because I don't think poor people are the ones that are just all like controlling the activities of terrorists. I think they have rich people that help them. And when people see that rich people are able to fund their activities and they feel hopeless in life, they will choose the route of terrorism. So I personally don't think that people want to be terrorists. I think most people want to be good people. But I think partly what leads to terrorism and what makes terrorism effective is where it are states that have almost failed or they have failed. I mean,
let me challenge you a bit on that, Omololu. I mean, taking the case of Boko Haram, for instance, they have expressed, that they just want to establish an Islamic state, nothing short of that. And if you look at their mode of operation, anybody who goes into a school and shoots people down, I can hardly call those good people.
Well, I don't think that people that actually shoot people down are good people. But what I am saying, I'm talking about, my premise is focused on the solution, because we have a problem. We have a global problem of terrorism, and we have to find some kind of solution to it.
We do.
And I think when they go to the extreme, like the Nigerian government stated, like when people go to the extreme of shooting students while they're asleep,
yep.
and those students absolutely have nothing to do with grudges you have with anybody. It is pretty much to get attention. And the fact is that I think the terrorists in Nigeria, around the world, are on the run because of the leadership of President Obama, of President Goodluck Jonathan, and other leaders. I think at this point we need to support the leaders, and because terrorism is not just a problem for the leaders.
Omololu,
all of us.
let me understand what you're saying properly. You think that terrorists are doing what they're doing because of the leadership of people like President Obama and President Jonathan? Explain that.
No. That wasn't what I stated. I said that their leadership is keeping the terrorists on the run. That means they don't feel safe. That is the reason why they go to the extreme of killing students.
So you mean to say that President Jonathan is actually doing something good, is it?
Okay. I don't like to look at issues as black and white.
Yep.
I think most issues are in the gray area. I am not trying to speak. I'm not the spokesperson of President Jonathan. I'm just speaking from how I see it. Terrorism existed in Nigeria before President Jonathan came into power, and pretty much terrorism existed before President Obama came into power. The one in Nigeria has been exacerbated during his regime. There are a lot of arguments in that. I think some of the terrorism in Nigeria is also political. But
all right.
What I'm saying is that partly the problem is when people feel hopeless, and partly I think it's also maybe they have been brainwashed, and we need to also figure out how people can not be gullible.
Okay.
And I think that can probably we can help that with maybe public information systems and education.
We'll get to the point where we start looking at possible solutions. For now, I just want us to open the issue properly so that everyone has a clear idea of what it's all about before we venture into the solutions. So let me ask you now, Kofi. on a recent visit to New York, President Mahama of Ghana said that these terrorists are shifting their focus to Africa because they're looking for softer targets. Is this really the case? Is Africa softer target?
Yes, it is. You know, I agree, because see, and that was the only reason that was the only thing I felt I contribute to this, because I'm not too, you know, well read in the Boko Harams and the local, you know, on the African scene. I didn't even read much on the Mali situation, but terrorists, I must agree with certain things that Omo Lulu said, but for the most part, terrorists are like cowards, you know what I'm saying? Extremist cowards. You know, because really, you know, if I really have a problem with the United States government per se, let's use that as an example. If I do have a problem with the United States government, I'm looking at Washington, D.C., and I'm not looking at poor people walking the streets of Washington, D.C., because that's 90% of inhabitants of Washington, D.C. I'm looking at climbing those steps to Congress and actually terrorizing those who make policies. You know, but I mean, because if you're going to be a terrorist, be brave, you know, be bold. You know, walk into the White House, you know, do something bold. Don't go and shoot sleeping students who can't change any policy. So I agree with President John Mahama. These are cowards, these are extremist idiots whose only intention is to apply shock to a very soft target. So much so that it's unconscionable and it evokes awe and then they get attention, like Ololulu is saying. But these are cowards, you know. I mean, I know guys who actually been to war with weapons and who died on the battlefield. So I don't get, you know, the target, you know, idea for these extremist cowards. You know, they look for soft targets. I hope Ghana really beats up and Ghana really starts getting into the business of foreigners in that country, because once they say they're going to do it, so we better be ready.
Yeah,
you know?
Yep. Ghana has a long history of contributing troops to the the United Nations peacekeeping forces and stuff like that. This is the time that Ghana has to sit up and defend herself, for sure. Now, let me ask you, Kwesi, would hitting these so-called softer targets make their point at all? Do you think it's worth attempting softer targets if they really want to make a point?
Oh, look, in the first place, the very notion of soft targets is it's artificial. It's not real, because terrorism. I mean, the discussion that we have that you just had makes it seem as if terrorists have one universal goal. That terrorists in Yemen have the same goal as terrorists in northern Nigeria, and the terrorists in the Tamil Tigers in Thailand have the same goal as those in Japan or wherever. No, it's not true. Terrorism have their goals. It differs from country to country.
Yeah.
So a terrorist. So when the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka wanted a separate state, you didn't find them bombing United States. No, they bombed India, because India was a country that was aiding the government were fighting. Same. When Al Qaeda has a problem with America, they bomb America. They bomb American targets. They don't. So for it to say that they're going to Africa to look for soft targets, of course they might target places where they'll find Americans. They might target places where they find Westerners. That's true, but they just don't come to the country just because they find a country as a soft target. There is a goal to terrorism. Terrorism is just the use of indiscriminate killings for a political goal. There is always a political goal behind every terrorist act. They're not madmen. And you immediately begin to think of terrorists as mad people, then you lose the battle in the first place. Because you have to understand what they want, and from that point, knowing what they want to achieve, that is how you can defeat terrorism. They really understand it. some Americans understand it, and you ought to understand it. Boko Haram, no matter how despicable they are, they have the grievances, they have the goal they want, they have the goal that they set. Let's look at what they're looking at. Let's look at what the Al Qaeda in the Maghreb want. Let's look at what those in the Sahel want. Let's look at what Al Shabaab wants, and then let's ask ourselves: how did we get here? How did we get here in the first place? How are we going to push these people back? How are we going to? Because you cannot use. It has to be a multifaceted approach. It can't be just violence against violence. Look, and let me make this point clear. When we say terrorists are cowards and stuff, yes, it's true. I mean, when you go to a school and kill 200 children, that's cowardice. But remember, there's a goal to it. There's a goal to it. It's to force the people to tell the state to compromise with these people, succumb to their demands. The same carpet bombing of Nazi Germany during the Second World War, when Americans bombed Nuremberg, Düsseldorf out of existence. They killed thousands of civilians. What was the purpose? It had no military significance. But the purpose was America was trying to force Germany to surrender. Tell the people to tell the government to surrender. The same as bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What's the point of it? You're sending a message to the people to send to the government that surrender or else we shall suffer. That's the point, and we need to get that.
Let me ask this as a follow-up to you, Kwesi. Must the government necessarily succumb? Must they give in to these demands? Sometimes, like in the case of Boko Haram, I know that the Nigerian government has made several overtures, several attempts to try to sit them down, to talk, but they seem just to want one thing and one thing only. How must the governments deal with a situation like that?
Look, there's so many ways. Listen, there's so many ways to deal with these things. Let me give a typical example. When the PLO in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, were the thorn in the flesh of the Israelis, what did the Israelis do? The Israelis tried to fight them as hard as they couldn't. So what did they do? They built a counter force to counter the PLO. I mean, God forbid. I mean, we all know what happened. That's what we call Hamas today. Hamas was created by Israel to be a counter force to PLO, right? And then by doing that, it weakened the PLO. Of course, it's created other problems. But what I'm trying to say is, sometimes you don't succumb to it, but sometimes you have to fight the enemy from within. You have to find ways of breaking them apart, bringing in discord. You can do it. But to just say, oh, they're cowards, they're murderers, they that, you're not solving the problem. We're not solving the problem.
Okay. All right. Omololu, what really can we blame for these acts of recklessness? Who or what, I should say. Let's not go into the who. Let's just look at what can we blame for these things.
Okay. What can we blame for terrorist activities?
Yep. Especially the recent spate of activities in Africa.
Well, I think that see Africa as a place that the laws are not properly enforced in some states in Africa, and they think they can take advantage of like those places that are not organized. Also, I think that they want to make an impression to the world that like they will go to any length to make sure that their purposes are fulfilled. So they will go anywhere in the world that people and they will go anywhere in the world where they think that they can be heard. And pretty much the West, which the terrorists supposedly have a problem with, do conduct business in African states. So they feel that if they can have a strong impact there, then they will send a message to the West. Because pretty much like one of the panelists said, they are on the run. Because if you want to attack someone, you don't attack somebody else that has absolutely nothing to do with the person. For example, I think the world should be outraged by those students that were killed in Nigeria recently while asleep. I think, like, I don't understand it. I just, really beg the leadership to do something about Africa. Like, everyone should, and let Africans have a voice in that conversation about how these terrorist activities can be stopped there.
Okay. All right. Kofi, let me get your opinion on the same question. What can we blame for these things?
Is this my question?
Yes, that's your question, Kofi.
Say again. I didn't hear the question.
Well, I just wanted your opinion on what you think should be blamed for the recent spate of terrorist activities shifting from the West to Africa.
I mean, if you want blame, I will say blame, ideologies. That's the root cause of all these extremism, ideologies. Quincy, we come from a school where I would say, hey, a mix of capitalism, but a little dose of socialism here might be ideal. Someone will be on one end and say, hey, let's go straight and peel on our traded capitalism, let the poor suffer and die. Someone will also say, let's go straight up socialism. Nobody's supposed to own anything if the government's hands are not in it. Go work and come share with me. And several mixes of such extreme ideas may work, for a certain country. May not work for another country due to cultural and, social setups, but I blame ideologies, that's who I blame. I really still insist the work of these terrorists, because
do you
it came to
do you think it's because these countries that they target seem to be in bed with the West? Is that a factor?
Oh, but of course, everybody, I know Kenyans who say, when the U.S. asks Kenya to jump, they don't just say, oh, why do you want us to jump? The follow-up question is, how high do you want us to jump? So we have, you have these, stereotypes that, countries, and I think Ghana is being targeted for the same reason, where people feel like, oh, there's a country that has some level of rule of law, but in the Western sense of it, where, we practice some degree of democracy, in a region where it might not be so popular. So, that'd be the only reason, if these frustrated, ideologically filled guys feel like you're so much in line with the West, then they attack you too. Because I mean, look at it this way. I mean, you see more Europeans, you see more American citizens in Nairobi than say you see in the capital of Niger, or let's say Chad, or so it'll be easier to like Quincy said, to target places where you find European presence, let me put it that way.
All right. Kwesi, help us to understand this. Certain groups of people, certain groups practically did the same thing that some of these terrorist groups are doing. But it actually takes time for a group to be tagged or to be recognized as a terrorist group. For example, the Lord's Resistance Army, it took such a long time before they were actually seen as a terrorist group. And also, if you look at their mode of, their mode of operations, it's not too different from what some of these other ones are doing, apart from, of course, the Islamist factor. What would be the main difference between, say, the Lord's Resistance Army and Al-Shabaab? What are the differences?
Seriously, Chrissy, there aren't any differences. If you ask me, we have much more despicable groups in Africa than Al-Shabaab. You look at Jonas Abimbi in Angola with his UNITA. You look at this Koneman in Uganda. You even look at the former ruler of Central African Republic, and he was a terrorist. I mean, this man killed almost 20% of his people. But as you rightly said, I mean, to actually tag someone a terrorist, that is it's a political decision and it's a political definition. Yep. So let me put it this way, as we always say, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So the ANC was once a terrorist group. A lot of groups were once tagged terrorist groups, and now they aren't terrorist groups anymore. But one thing that Kofi made some very solid points, but let me add to what Kofi just said. One of the main factors and one of the main driving factors of terrorism is Salafism and Wahhabism, and these two strains of Islam is what feeds or what gives this gives the ideological impetus to these groups. And who are the people who propagate and promote this ideology? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the number one sponsor of terrorism in this world. And if we are not brave enough to point this out, this fight against terrorism is not going to go anywhere. Their strain of Islam is radical, and it is what is feeding all this nonsense that we've seen all over the world. Right? People are reluctant to point this out because obviously Saudi is one of the biggest, if not the biggest producer of oil in the world. But so we don't mention.
And a friend of the United States.
Of course. But Saudi is a much more bigger sponsor of terrorism than Iran, Iraq, Syria, whatever. That is the problem. That Saudi Arabia is a problem. You look at all these people, and they have ties to Saudi Arabia. They are funded. They have so much money. Like, where is the money coming from? Just when you flow the money, it goes back to Saudi Arabia, and that is a problem. And in order for us to actually address this, because it's an ideological battle. It's not just it's an ideological battle. To fight an ideological battle, you need to present superior arguments. So we need to have a lot more Muslims come out and say, no, this is not the interpretation of our religion. And sadly, we've allowed Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud, to actually hijack the religion and tell us what the religion is about, to a point where it's almost contradictory to what we know Islam to be.
Just to add a point, I agree with what the panelists just stated now. I think there are good Muslims out there. So I think those voices need to be heard. I think there are lots of Muslims around the world that will speak about peace, and I think those voices need to be elevated. I think that is one of the ways that this problem can be solved. Because we all can agree. I don't just think it's about people being hungry. I think also it's about their mentality, their ideology. So if they hear that message over and over again, that you can be a Muslim and still be peaceful, and I think that argument can help peace to reign.
Definitely, Omololu, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Let me. Yep.
Sorry, can you just give
Yes, please. Yes.
Let me just give you one scenario. When Northern Ireland was in turmoil, when the IRA were fighting the Brits and the English in Northern Ireland, did you ever hear of Catholics targeting British installations in South America?
No.
Why?
Possibly because it didn't fall, within their purview. It wasn't really
precisely because it was a localized issue. The problem with the Salafism is they believe in the caliphate. They believe in a universal state. So whatever happens in Ireland happens to affect us in Brazil. So then we have to attack them in Brazil, and that's a problem.
It's a very interesting point that you've raised, Kwesi, because so far, I've been involved in so many discussions on this subject. Nobody has ever mentioned this point at all. And as a matter of fact, I mean, Saudi Arabia is so close to the United States that you would not think that this would be traced anywhere close to Saudi Arabia. But
do a bit of research. You realize that the ideological capital derives from Saudi Arabia. Financial capital.
Let me pick your brains on this though. What's his name? Osama bin Laden, for instance, is one of the most popular, if not the most popular terrorist the world has ever seen in recent times.
Yes,
but we know that he was not in the good books of Saudi Arabia. Was there a link between him and Saudi Arabia too?
Sure. Look, when Brzezinski and Carter began the insurrection against the Soviets in Afghanistan, they actually decided not to send American troops there, so they had to use local troops and foreign troops so Islamists from the Middle East and even the Caucasus, but it was difficult from the Caucasus. But that's where it began. So people like Osama bin Laden went there to fight the Soviets. So at that time, they were in the good books of Saudi. He was in the good books of Saudi Arabia. He was in the good books of the CIA and United States. The rift came when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and America and Saudi Arabia asked for American troops to protect the state. Osama bin Laden wanted his forces to replicate what they had done in Afghanistan, in driving out the Soviets, to do the same to Hussein in Kuwait. And that's where the rift began. That's where the rift between Saudi Arabia and bin Laden began. But before then, he was in the good books of bin Laden. So it's not as if right from the word go, he was a pariah, he was seen as a hothead. No, he was seen as an ally until the early 90s.
That's true.
So we should bear that in mind.
That's right. That's true. All right, Kofi, are we looking at a looming jihad, world jihad? Someone said to my hearing that World War III is going to be a religious war. Are we staring that in the face?
I'll say not yet. I'll say not. I must say Quasi is very, very well versed on this issue. I like the universal, picture that he drew as far as the ideology, of some of these Islamic extremists knowing national boundaries. To answer your question, I don't think we're there yet. They don't have the power. They don't have the level of sophistication when it comes to weaponry, and I don't think they'll ever get it to elevate it to that level of a world war. It's going to be scattered. They're going to remain opportunistic, just soft targets, like John Muhammad said. And before I get out of this, I really want to mention that Omoli was saying that there are good Muslims. He didn't even need to say that. I know there are good Muslims. My grandparents on my mother's side were all Muslims. I'm Catholic, for another reason. Nobody cares anyway. But my point is, there are good Muslims, and you don't even have to waste time saying it, because on the Christian side, they're equally idiotic extremists. They might not go in and bomb places in broad daylight and lay claim to it the next day, but they probably do far worse in the name of religious extremism. But I don't think we're ready for World War III yet.
Okay.
If it happens, it's going to be swift. It's going to be from a very unexpected source.
Okay. All right. But what I would say to that is that every Muslim is a good person. I think that those people who are doing that are not Muslims at all. What it is that they are not like I keep saying all the time, there's a sea of difference between Islamic and Islamist. These people are hiding behind Islam to cause all the atrocities they are causing. I really don't regard them as Muslims. Not that I'm an authority on Islam anyhow. But yeah. Anyway, Omololu,
yes, sir.
These acts are also linked with a history of events, some of which Kwesi has so vividly painted for us. policies he also mentioned, and some acts, acts and omissions. Is it time for the West to review their policies towards these groups that, the militants claim to be protecting or to be defending? Is it time for the West to have a rethink of their policies towards countries like Iran, Syria, and all these other countries?
I mean, I think that this is all my opinion. I mean, I'm a fellow with Organizing for Action, but I'm not in any way speaking on behalf of them. I think President Obama is doing well with speaking to Iran, and because I think wars alone cannot create peace. We have seen that with Iraq. So my point is that we have an opportunity in the world with the leadership of President Obama to create peace. Like with the whole Syria situation, maybe if it was another president that was in power, maybe we would be in war with Syria right now. But we are letting diplomacy happen, and we need to keep encouraging President Obama. And also, we need to keep encouraging him to do the right thing. I think it is not enough for us to complain or just speaking in our homes. I think we need to speak to our congressmen. We need to speak about peace, because the leaders in the world can only function well if we hold them accountable. And with the case of Africa, where like Nigeria, where the democracy has not materialized there yet, I think the world needs to really focus on Africa, especially countries where
Nigeria runs a system of democratic governance. Why would you say that?
I mean, that is laughable. It's not democracy, because the most of the elections have not been fair. We all know that.
Whoa, but that's across board. We just heard of the situation in Zimbabwe where people were complaining about vote rigging, and even in Ghana, which is touted as a beacon of democracy and good governance and whatnot. There was an 8-month, court procedure based on a so-called, stolen election. So I don't know what you're saying.
Yes, I mean, elections will not be perfect, but I mean, what I'm saying is that democracy is not functioning well in countries like Nigeria, because the leaders are still using the methods that military leaders used. Pretty much use the police, use the military to function, and they don't care about the will of the people.
I don't want to overflog this horse, but Omololu, I've heard Nigerians say that Goodluck Jonathan is actually the best leader in the past few decades.
Well, I mean,
opinions,
we
right?
haven't seen the fruits of those works yet, and I'm just being honest. So if those fruits come out, maybe now or in the near future, then I think we can make that judgment. Now, I think it is premature to compare President Jonathan and other presidents.
Okay, I hear you on that one. Okay, Kwesi, let me come to you. Just the other day, I was reading from a well-respected source that some African generals are trying to secure drones to fight terrorists in their territories. Would you endorse such a move?
Anyway, if if it weren't for the seriousness of its consequences, I would have loved it off. But let me try and answer this.
Why would you laugh it off?
Look, in the first place, these drones wouldn't work. They wouldn't be maintained. They will. No, you know what? Let's not even go into that. Let me just answer your question. Okay. Whenever you hear African generals trying to secure or procure something, then it means there's something in it for them, right? So that's one thing that we have to understand. Secondly, the issue when it comes to drone, that's another issue altogether. For you to fly at 20,000 feet and drop bombs and missiles at people extrajudiciously, it's to me, it's criminal. Irrespective of the person who does it, it's criminal. And if you think that because America does it and gets away with it, we can also do it and get away with it. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with this. I think somebody on the panel talked about cowardice. I think the height of cowardice is to fly at 30,000 feet and throw bombs at people. That's my definition of cowardice.
Even if that's going to prevent these people, I mean, if that's going to stop these people from killing innocent people?
It has never stopped anyone. Drones have not stopped anyone from, have not stopped terrorism. It's not going to stop terrorism. Just like any counter-terrorism measure, it might stem it a bit, but the blowback effect is much more than its benefits. Look at it this way: when think of the number of people who have died, civilians who have died as a result of these attacks. You don't see them on TV, but thousands have died. When you drop a 500-pound bomb, it's not going to kill a single human being, is it?
Yep, no, never.
Of course. So we should understand that. And in Africa, we know how indiscriminately they use it. So no, I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay, Kofi, are you in favor or are you against the use of drones to stop, the terrorist activities in Africa?
I'm so much against it, and I think Kwesi's right about it. How it indiscriminately used. I mean, listen, for drones the technology to actually work, for the intention for which these drones were made, you have to have a microscopic grasp of, your GPS, points, longitude and latitude, and if you deviate even a few centimeters in your calculations, the more civilians that will die, not for a place like Africa. We have a little far more to go. I was organizing streets and addresses and, to seriously sort of, it should be considered a straight international travesty if an African nation even attempts to use a drone.
I see. Omololu, what's your take on that?
Yes, sir. And what is the? Can you repeat the question?
There have been reports of some African generals in countries which are faced with terrorism, trying to secure drones to fight these terrorists. Would you endorse such a move?
Well, I mean, that is a military operation, and I'm not an expert on that, so I don't think I mean, I'm not gonna comment on that, but I will comment on the aspect of like solutions that are non-military solutions, and I think those solutions can be education. I think if like people feel like that the state cares about them, then they will be less likely to go into terrorism. I mean, like historically, Nigerians have not engaged in terrorism, and there have been So pretty much, I think that like when the state takes its eyes off terrorists and off violence and pretty much does everything else, I think that's when you see the situation exacerbated. So I think when anywhere you see people coming together and start doing activities of violence and in the name of maybe religion, right, and start like senseless killings, I think the world needs to put their attention on that. I don't think we should wait till it gets to the point where thousands of people are killed till we start paying attention.
Okay.
That's what I kind of think.
All right. Okay. Kwesi,
Yes, sir.
do you think non-alignment is the way for Africa to go to avoid these things? I mean, we've established even on this program that some of these, attacks are as a result of the notion that these African countries are kind of aligned with the West. Do you think non-alignment is the way to go for Africa? Do you think this will stop this phenomenon?
You see, Kwesi, on paper, you see, non-alignment, yes, you can say it, but in reality, there's nothing really like non-alignment. Now we have a unipolar world, and when many of these countries have almost 50, 60 to 70% of their budgets being financed by these Bretton Woods institutions. So it's very, very difficult for you to say no to them. So it's a case of he who pays the piper calling the tune.
Yep.
Yes. We wouldn't want to align ourselves with the West to a point where we shall be subjected to all these carnage. But the reality is, the global system is created in such a way that we have these core countries and we are on the periphery. So we just have to. We just have to go with them. Back in the day when there was the Cold War, at least, there was the Soviet Union, so you could say, okay, I'm not going to align myself with these people, I'm going to align myself with these people and stuff and play them off. But now you can't do that. Now they're all together. So you either toe their line or you're ostracized. And I don't think any of these African countries can stand without Western support. So non-alignment, yes, I would say if we were self-sufficient, yes, then obviously we shouldn't get involved in all these kinds of ideological struggles and geopolitical conflicts. But we've placed ourselves and we've mismanaged our countries to a point where we are beholden to these countries.
Well, let me rephrase the question. I totally love your answer, but let me still rephrase the question and see if you have a slightly different, answer to that. What about countries that are like friends with these so-called, terrorist countries? If, for instance, you have countries that are friendly with Syria and all these other countries, do you think that would change anything?
Yes and no. Okay, let me put it this way. You see, when a country, okay, so let's take Al Qaeda in the Maghreb, and you have to understand what their goal is, and their goal is to Islamatize the whole. I don't know if it's a word in the first place. Islamatize the whole of the Maghreb. So from Algeria south, so northern Algeria, right down to Mali, has to be an Islamic enclave. So those people wouldn't be interested in a country like Ghana or a country like Ivory Coast, a country of Sierra Leone, because in the first place, it's not an Islamic country. Then you look at Al Qaeda in the Sahel or Al Shabaab. The reason why Al Shabaab went to Kenya, and we should understand this, they didn't go to Kenya because they looked for soft targets in the first place. They went to Kenya as retribution for Kenya's involvement in the war in Somalia.
Yep.
And we should get that straight. But when we make it seem as if it's one whole big conflict, like a world war, where Islamic over the world have one goal, and they're indiscriminately targeting Christians and Westerners all over the world, it's not true. Why didn't they go to Ethiopia? Okay, maybe Ethiopia would have been tougher anyway. I will submit. But why didn't they go to other countries? Why didn't they think of Egypt? Why didn't they think of Algeria? Why didn't they think of Morocco? Right? But they thought of Kenya, and this is not the first time they've actually targeted Kenya. If you remember, targeted Kenya before.
Yep.
So we should understand that this is a localized issue, and we need to solve it locally. But the problem is, when the Islamic Union, Islamic Courts Union, I don't remember. You remember the Islamic Courts Union? It was an organization, a coalition of Islamists that took control of Somalia.
Yep.
When they took control of Somalia,
Al-Shabaab actually came out of that, right?
Precisely. And why did they come out of it? Because when this court was in existence, these were moderate forces. These were forces that were way better than the warlords that had created their own fiefdoms in Somalia. When these people came, they brought in a semblance of governance, a semblance of security in Somalia. No, the West said no, we don't want them. They kicked them out. The only faction that fought the West was Al-Shabaab. So sometimes an historical analysis or a historical perspective of these things will shed some light. And we in Kenya, Ethiopia, and co are actually suffering from the consequences of their actions.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, we are running out of time, but I have one last question, which I'm going to actually I have two questions, but one is a really short question that I'm going to put to Omololu, purely because of his interest in Nigeria. And then the other question, we will all, give our opinions on it. Omololu, Nigeria is dealing with its own internally bred brand of terrorism, Boko Haram. The UN, the AU, all of that went to the aid of Mali to prevent the terrorists from taking over the country. Are we waiting till Boko Haram reaches Abuja before we see the same thing happening in Nigeria?
Well, and that is a very good question. I personally think that the world should be more involved in what is happening in Nigeria. Nigeria is a strategic country to Africa and the world. And I personally think the world, the international community needs to be more involved in what is going on in Nigeria. I do not want Nigeria to be used as a safe haven for terrorism activities.
Okay. All right. So, solutions. Let's start with you, Omololu, since you're already on the floor. And I know you've already offered some solutions to all of this. But sum up briefly in a minute, what do you think can be done to curb this spate of terrorist attacks in Africa?
I think that it is good that President Jonathan reached out to the leaders of Boko Haram, but they haven't reached back to him. I think that that approach, also talking to them, because I think most countries that have dealt with this kind of problem have spoken to those people and to see how diplomacy can help. And so I think also, because I did not add this aspect earlier, that's why I'm adding it. So I think, but if they don't come out to talk, then what do we do? I think pressure needs to be exerted on them.
Okay. Kofi? Hello, Kofi?
Hey, I'm here.
Yes. The question, though, the final question actually is, what do you think can be done to curb the spate of terrorist attacks in Africa in terms of policy, in terms of, military action, whatever it takes to stop these acts of recklessness? What's your suggestion? Hello? Okay. All right. Let me come to you, Kwesi. I don't know if Kofi is still there. Would you take that up, Kwesi?
Sure.
Okay, I'm here. Sorry,
Okay,
I had my
okay.
phone on mute.
All right,
I had
Kofi.
my phone on mute.
That's okay. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I was talking after you, and then I realized you guys weren't hearing it. Basically, after 911 in New York City, we came up with the city. You know, if you see something, say something. I think Africans would have to begin to become more vigilant. You know, I tell folks we are the freest place on earth, but you can't be too free-minded. Sometimes you have to be slightly nosy, you know, for your own safety. So I think we just have to become more vigilant, especially Ghana. Now that we've been warned, you know, we have to be a little more vigilant, and that's it for me.
Okay, Kwesi.
Yeah, okay. Basically, I'll add to. I'll just say we need to address this issue holistically. We have to look at the socio, political, and economic situation. We need to ask ourselves whether that has an impact or an effect of on what is happening now. We need to cooperate when it comes to the sharing of when it comes to security. We need to share intelligence. We need to understand the psyche of these terrorists. That's the most important thing. We need to understand these terrorists. We don't need to adopt their. Hello?
Go ahead, Kwesi.
Yeah, we don't need to adopt simplistic cliches that or cliches that will that serves no purpose. We need to actually study these groups. We need to cooperate and find ways of dealing with them. It's a daunting task. I mean, it's a very daunting. I don't have a prescription for it, but all I can say is you just need to work collectively as a unit in order to curb this.
We do. And just for your information, I'm sure most of you, I mean, all three of you probably would have heard about it before. I mean, already. But there was news of a strange-looking helicopter that landed on the Ghana-Ivorian border with a single manned helicopter. There was just one pilot in it. And when it landed in a very remote village, and when the villagers approached it, the pilot claimed that he landed because of bad weather, read his map, and took off again. This is scary. I mean, nobody, the deputy minister of defense, that is, had no clue what it was all about. And this is coming just days after reports of an imminent threat on the country. I think that we definitely have to sit up as a continent, as Africa. And I also think that totally, collectively, the world order has to be rethinked, if I can say that. I think that a lot of these things are because of an unjust world order where people think like they're getting the loose end of the rope. To stop all these things, yes, there might be the military solution, there might be whatever, but I think that the UN and whichever body is responsible needs to sit people down and rethink the world order. And on that note, I would like to say thank you so much, gentlemen. You've kept me on my I mean, you've kept this thing very lively. I was supposed to go for a break, but I was like, no, I'm enjoying this so much. I actually forgot to go for a break because the discussion was really engaging. Thank you so very much, and
No problem. Thank you.
hopefully,
Thank you, Kwame.
hopefully,
And thank you for having us.
yes, definitely, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week when there's another subject. We would like to end this program on the note of a song by one of our own, Kofi Dishon, who was just on this panel. It's called Caution. We need to take caution. Blessed love. See you next week.
Yo, Ross, want some? Listen, boom. Caution. Caution. Why can't we love one another? Caution. Caution, tunnel work on the tunnel. Caution. Caution, can't stand manipulation. Caution. Caution.